first of all, hi, and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing, and how have you been during these crazy times?
Um, I'm good. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the interview, for covering the record. I'm doing all right. It's been a crazy time, of course, but it has been for everyone, and I'm excited about the upcoming release. So yeah, things are good in House Wessels.
First of all, congratulations on your the release of your first solo album. Of course, these tracks have been released beforehand, but I was wondering, how are you feeling about the upcoming like physical release of the thing?
Yeah. It's different. It's different from the Patreon space. Of course, that's kind of a space where, everyone's really coming along for all of the parts of what you're doing. It's a really tight knit community. So the songs going out onto the digital formats as well on the vinyl is it's still exciting. It's also, reviews are coming through, and yeah, it makes me a little bit nervous, but it's also very good, um, because I figured straight early into the Patreon process that I tried to make the Patreon as accessible as possible. But I'm still very aware, of my own privilege and the fact that €3 a month, or €3 and download everything and then move on. It's still a lot for some people. So I wanted my music outside of that as well, or at least a part of it. So yeah, that's exciting.
Before we talk more about the album, I was actually wondering about creating this Patreon account and wondering about your solo album. Is that something that you always wanted to do, write your own music, do everything for your own account? Or was it something that happened because, you left Delain and all that stuff?
No, it's kind of, when I started thinking about the Patreon account, it was just out of the fact that I was always writing a lot of music, and of course, a portion of that ended up on the Delain albums. Um, but there were also things that didn't fit that realm, because they were just too different in style, or just because they were surplus or whatever. And there was just a point where I started feeling bad about the number of songs that were on a hard drive somewhere and no one was listening to them, and I thought that was a shame. So I started thinking about what can I do to release these songs anyway. And I've considered doing like a side project, but that's something that I've done before, like enthusiastically as well. In 2015, for example, I did The Deviant Heart, which was a record and a book with Phantasma. But there I always felt like I was keeping the rest of the group back because, Delaine was very ambitious. We were touring a lot, and there was simply not a lot of space for me um, to do that on the side. So I figured whatever I was going to do to these songs, it should be something where I can really kind of do it independently, so that I can kind of make up the rules and it wouldn't fight with Delaine. So when I started it, that was the idea, to have a home for the songs that were not going to make it to Delaine albums. And then I started in 2020, and obviously it also became a great pandemic activity because we were not touring, and behind the scenes we were working through our issues with the band. So it was something really positive to keep me creatively invested at that time. And when Delane ended up splitting, it became my full-time thing. So also now the approach to my songs on Patreon is also different, because whereas when I was beginning, it was like only a place for the songs that would never fit on a Delane album, which is, why a lot of people were so shocked when they found, oh my God, where's the metal? now it's kind of a different approach, and all of the things can find their way onto the Patreon. So in the more recent months, there's also some more metal tracks on there. But yeah, this release, Tales from 6 Feet Under, is really from the first year. So there's mostly all things that are different from that. So yeah, it started with a different idea than what it ended up with. But I'm really glad it ended up like this, because now I've got now it's been a great safety net, and I'm happy to have it now all out there. Yeah.
Now you mentioned that, and of course the record. There's a lot of non-metal songs on there, but as an artist, do you listen a lot to non-metal music? Because we mostly know you from the symphonic metal world, I guess. So I'd be curious to know at least what you
I
listen.
think if I describe my taste in music, it's a lot of heavy music, but it's somber music. Like it's music that's dramatic, that's dark. But I also listen to a lot of alternative music that's dramatic and dark. I also listen to pop music that's dramatic and dark. So I definitely have a flair for the goth side of things. But within that, it can really go from from pop. Like in the pop realm, I really like think of Aurora or Florence and the Machine. Then my favorite band ever is Radiohead. And I love Nick Cave, and so I think that the dark dramatic side of it is kind of the connecting factor in there. For me, it makes total sense, but it still resulted in a quite eclectic record when I put all the songs together.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was asking, or when I was writing down my questions, I was wondering if you might be a Nick Cave fan, because I think his lyrics also take such an important role in the music, and I felt the same with your record.
Yeah, I'm a big Nick Cave fan. One of the last shows I've seen pre-pandemic was his Evening with Nick Cave, the one where he sits down with the piano in the middle of the audience and people just ask questions, and he doesn't have a set list, he doesn't have a band, he just talks to the audience and plays songs, and it was my heart.
Is that a show format that you would also like to experiment with?
I think you have to be older and wiser to do that. There was a lot of, hey, Nick, share your wisdom about this or that topic. And I feel that if people would do that to me, that I would give a lot of bad advice. However, I did enjoy the format. And I enjoyed the fact that I think it takes a very good musician also to sit down for an evening like that without a plan and then be entertaining for 2+ hours,
Yeah, I think, you're kind of having the same format, but maybe online with this Patreon community. Like, you kind of include your fans a little bit more than in the past. Now, I think a lot of other artists have been trying Patreon and Twitch out during this time that there's not a lot of tours. Do you think that this is maybe the future of the music industry, or where do you see these online platforms are going?
I am obviously a big fan of these platforms. I think Patreon has really been a revelation to me. I've given it a lot of thought before I started. And for me, it really, when I thought of what I wanted to do, it really came out on top of, making albums the traditional way, or getting funds the traditional way. And so I think that for me and for a lot of people who've chosen this, it can be a really good way of both connecting with their audience and releasing their things, whatever it is, I do think that also a lot of people, and this is something to realize, during the pandemic, a lot of people have also kind of been finding for ways to keep making music. Like, it was a problem, you know, they didn't have the shows anymore, and then it kind of became a solution to the pandemic problem to them. And maybe for them it's more like a short-term solution. It wouldn't surprise me if when things go back to normal, a lot of people think, okay, maybe this is now not necessary for me anymore, or I'm going to do it differently. Maybe a lot of people will stick around even though they never expected to work this way and they just got into it because of the pandemic. But for me, it is something that, that I kind of set up way before that was, I started it in the middle of the pandemic. I even considered for a little bit, because I just put the release date or like the published date of my Patreon. I put it on my birthday because I thought, oh, that's nice, you know? When the pandemic started, I thought, this is not a time to start asking people for money. I've got to postpone it. Maybe I've got to wait until the pandemic is over. I am so glad that I didn't do that. But yeah, that's just to say that, you know, I think especially since so many people joined in during the pandemic, I'm sure that a lot of them will jump out, but I am very convinced that it can be like a long-term way of living and making art.
Yeah, and I think maybe, well, I'm not sure about music, but at least I'm also a photographer, and too many people kind of expect people to do things for free. So I think Patreon is like a great idea to get paid, you know, exposure, maybe.
Yeah. Oh God, isn't that annoying? You're an artist, do it for exposure. That's all right. I will just take that exposure to the supermarket and ask if I can pay my groceries with that, you know? No, I think it's a great solution for those kind of things. Yeah.
Now, do you feel having this Patreon account, do you feel that it also provides you with more artistic freedom than being in kind of an institution that a band is, I would say?
Yeah, well, of course it does, but in a lot of different ways. You know, way number one is actually every time that you start something new, you have that kind of freedom. You know, when I started doing a project with Phantasma, for example, that didn't exist, and then it came into existence, so people didn't have an expectation of what you were going to do. Every time you start something new, you have that kind of lack of previous thing, so you can start afresh. So that's the one thing why it's liberating. Of course, it's the fact that I'm doing it myself, which is it has its pros and cons. For me, the pro is that I've got like total freedom and I only have to take my own taste into consideration. At the other hand, you know, I do believe that good creative cooperation can also make you end up with something that's greater than the sum of its parts. So I'm not saying that that's only a positive thing, but in terms of, you know, creative freedom, obviously it's a factor. And then I think the third thing that kind of amounts to the freedom is the fact that I'm not working on a album basis right now. But with the song of the month, I can really start each month and think like, what am I going to do this month? And I am completely kind of free in that. Now, I do notice now that I've been going on for a little bit longer, also there, since it's not new anymore. Now I've been doing this for a year and a half. So I noticed that also there. And now I'm like, maybe I should do this kind of song again, or maybe I should do this kind of song again. Like I should take the balance in consideration. So even with a free format like that, you know, after a while you start getting those kind of things again. But it's kind of dependent on how you set it up yourself. Because I know a lot of bands, existing bands, they set up a Patreon, and then of course people expect exactly the same as what they've already been doing. So there's multiple factors. The alone factor is a thing, the new factor is a thing, the monthly or kind of treating songs as autonomous songs instead of as an album is a thing. And I would also like to make an album as an album again, because then you have more like a longer flow. Like I have a long attention span. I like longer things. So if I would look at this record, Tales from 6 Feet Under, like it's a bit eclectic. So you have to pay attention as a listener. You're not taken by the hand. You have to be an active listener. But the good part about that for me is that every song itself is uncompromised. Like I didn't have to make the pop song less pop because it had to fit into the album. I didn't have to make the metal song less metal because it had to. So that's what I like about it. Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned before, I thought that the lyrics play an important factor in your music, and I was wondering how you usually go about writing them. Is it more like a creative flow, or do you usually have a topic in mind that you want to write about?
It kind of differs. Usually I start with a line or a feeling, and a line, and then I work from there. And then sometimes that will take me all the way until the end of the song. Sometimes it will take me one verse, and then I have to think like, do I want to make an entire song based on this thing, or do I want to kind of put it into a different perspective? And now, every now and then, this is something that didn't happen to me so often, but now sometimes I'm working on instrumental things and I can be halfway with a song and then I still have to think about the first word that's going to be on there. But then there's always a feeling, you know. So I have different ways of approaching it. For me, it's obviously important to get the story across, and I often try to write in a way that makes it. I try to center it not so much about my own feeling, but also what someone going through a similar feeling might want to hear, and maybe making them feel better in that. That's for me kind of the goal, I would say.
I think this is also the first time that I heard you sing in Dutch. Is that something you would like to experiment more with in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it was also something where I thought, you know, in this particular case, like that first sentence that popped up, like I was thinking of the bass line and the beginning of the verse. That was the first thing that was there for this song. And so the thing that I started with happened to be in Dutch, and normally, or with the band, I would then see if I like the idea. Okay, let's translate it to English and see if it still works. But as I'm kind of treating every song autonomously for this song of the month, I just thought, let's roll with it and see what's going to happen. And I liked what happened. It was a different process from writing English for sure. But I liked both how it was more comfortable because it was my own language, and then how it was more challenging because you're more critical of your own language. So it's not necessarily a goal for me to do that more often, but yeah, if something pops up again and it happens to be Dutch, I'm definitely going to let it be what it wants to be, because I feel like it can be done, you know?
Yeah. What did your fans think of that song, actually?
They rather enjoyed it. Of course, there were some questions about, you know, what are the lyrics? Do you have a translation? What are we talking about here? But I think it's one of the more popular songs on the record, and I'm going to try. I really want to make a video with this one, so yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll get foot on the ground in my own country for once. No, but I really like the song, and I would like to kind of expand the creative world around it and give it a visual world as well. So I'm not done with it yet.
Yeah. And there was also the duet with Alyssa, and of course, I guess she's one of your friends. But I was wondering, are there any other collaboration in the works, or is there anyone you would like to collaborate with in the future?
I mean, I'm friends with a lot of talented people, and I always like to get together to work with them. It's not for the songs of the month. It's not like I kind of also like the introspectiveness of it. So it's not like, oh, I have to work with this and that person. But I do really like to, I do really like to work with others or for others, maybe even. I'd love to write songs for other artists. Then I guess that's what every songwriter kind of really wants to do. Like, I don't even have to be the one performing the things. But yeah, I definitely like to collaborate more. It's always interesting to see what comes out of it. And like I mentioned earlier, it's lovely to be the one, deciding everything from A to Z. But I also believe that if you have a team of people that works well together, you can get to a result that's bigger than, what you each could do individually, or, the sum of its parts. So yeah, I do see more collaborations in the future. Yeah.
Now you also did a cover song, Cry Little Sister. What made you pick that specific song?
I mean, I didn't even set out to record a cover. It's actually quite funny because I had been kind of overworking myself for a while before I started working on this track. And I told myself I'm going to have a quiet weekend. I'm going to actually take a weekend. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to head into the studio, because even if it's the thing that I love to do most, of course, it's now my full-time job, so it's also work. And I needed to quiet down my mind. So I said, I'm not going to do anything, and I'm going to watch a movie, and that's it. And I wanted to watch The Lost Boys because it's a cult classic. I've seen a lot of art based on it. That I really liked, with the vampires with the mullets and the leather jackets, but it's from the year that I was born, so it was before my time. Anyways, sorry, I'm making this story too long. So I was not going to do anything. I was just going to watch a movie, and then the movie started, and it started with Cry Little Sister, and I heard the little choirs, and I was obsessed straight away. And then I spent the weekend that I was not going to do anything recording the covers. So there's that.
Yeah.
So like they say, if you like what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life, or all of the days of your life, depending how you look at it. It's it's like that.
Yeah, I know how that feels. Now, during this whole process, did you learn anything about yourself, or just about music and your music while you were writing all of these songs?
So much. Still going too. I think I don't even know where to start. So I've learned a lot from doing the song per month, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I used to be someone who only started projects and never finished them. So I remember, for example, that when I was writing the novella, The Deviant Hearts, that I had days where I wrote like 2 sentences a day, just because everything that I would write, I would delete again. Out of this crippling fear of failure, And I wanted to get past that, and I must say that forcing myself to have a release every month, that really helped me in kind of overcoming that fear and overcoming that perfectionism in a way. On the other hand, and what I also learned a lot, because I've been doing everything myself, like all these songs, with the exception of the cover, were written here. I recorded or programmed everything with the exception of the duet with Elisa Whitecluse, where she recorded her own vocals, obviously, and also worked on the drum and guitar arrangements. And I produced a bunch, and that was very new to me. So it was both on a personal level and on a music level. Like, I'm still figuring out how a lot of things work. And that's also why I'm keeping the song every month going. I'm still doing a song every month on the Patreon, and I I really want to keep that going. And another thing that I'm now learning is I'm learning a lot from that, and I have a lot to learn from that, but I also want to do long-term things again. So now I'm going to have to see, because when I started this, with delain, we would do the things where we would write with the team and then rewrite and then rearrange, and then everyone kind of took it to their own island and reworked their parts again. And those were more long-term projects. Now that I'm doing this, I realize that I really enjoy this spontaneous way of making music, but I kind of miss having those long-term projects as well. So I've got to figure out a way to do that at the same time as still doing the Song of the Month. And that's something that I'm now working on. So I've never had such a steep learning curve in my life, and I've got a lot more to go. So I guess I'll be busy for a while longer.
Yeah, well, now you mentioned already a little bit. What do you think the future holds for you? Are you going to focus on this Patreon and tour?
I don't think I'm going to keep focusing on this Patreon, and I hope to be on stage again with that. I'm not sure what band I could join that would be both so cool that I would, dedicate my time to that. And then if it would be so cool, I don't think that it would leave me the time to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like giving up on this. No. So yeah, I'm going to keep doing the song per month, and I'm going to also work on long-term projects, and I'm going to find a way to bring the songs to the stage as well.
Yeah, it's going to be very cool once it's possible, of course. Now, I guess our time is almost up. So do you have any last thoughts you want to share?
I just want to thank people for checking out the interview, for checking out the record. If they do enjoy it, I mean, I'm still going at the Patreon. There's still more songs coming, so people can check that out as well. And I'm happy to keep going, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time for the interview as well.